So we just got done watching A.I.C.O, and we're getting ready to do probably a long-ass discussion about it. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about the nature of finish or fail, and why I have yet to talk about Gridman on it. Because people are constantly commenting, when are you going to tackle Gridman? And they're also just commenting about, like, just not seeming to really get what the point of this series is. This is not a review series. It is also not a comprehensive rundown of everything that came out during the year. The point of Finish or Fail is that sometimes I decide to go ahead and make top 10 or top 20 of the year lists, wherein I try to watch, or sample at least, every single show that came out because of the fact that I don't trust anybody else's opinions about shows. Stuff that gets super high scores everywhere else, I don't end up liking. Stuff that nobody cares about, I end up loving. Uchu Senkan Tiramisu is my second favorite show of 2018 that I've seen so far, and that show has below a 7 on Mal. So, you know, I tend to be wary of the way people talk about shows, so I want to sample it all. And in the process of that, why not get some content out of it? Because I know that people are going to ask for my opinions on shows anyways. Especially if I mark anything on my anime list, people will always ask me to talk about it because people literally camp my Mal. So I figured this is a great way to kill two birds with one stone. Anytime I watch a show, I'll just watch it for as long as I care to, and then pull out the camera the instant I'm done and say whatever's on my mind. Now, previously, back in 2016, I used to do this alone because I lived alone and I watched anime by myself. Now, I live with May and we watch all of our anime together. Ergo, when we finish a show and I pull out the camera, she's right there, and usually we are discussing the show as we watch it. Therefore, I end up with way more to say than I used to have to say back in my old videos. It used to be that I might not go on about every show for as long, especially if I dropped it relatively quickly. I would be way more dismissive of shows. I was usually just like kind of blew through a couple bullet points and just didn't really give most shows even a fair description of what I didn't like about them. And I would get a lot of shit for it. People would always complain that I didn't go into enough detail, that my reasoning wasn't very good. So I thought it might be better to go into more depth to make sure you fully understand why I felt the way that I felt, unless it's a show that, like the Pantsu one from the last episode, I don't think anybody's gonna care about at all. Or something like that Juliet show, even though it is popular, where just like it's so out of the realm of something I would ever consume that it's obvious that I wouldn't enjoy it. And, you know, again, because I talk about all this stuff with her as we're watching, I like to have her there so we can kind of remind each other of the things that we talked about. Sometimes a lot of the stuff I will say about a show will be things that she had said while we were watching it, but because of the fact that I talk faster and will just motor through points and flesh them out, she'll just let me do her argument, basically. Like, she'll just, like, kind of bring up something that she felt.
I don't need credit.
You don't need credit, as you say. So, yeah, that's why we do the show the way that we do, why the episodes are longer. But again, it's not meant to be a review. It's literally just whatever's on my mind after finishing watching however much I want to before I blast away and go on to the next thing. Now, the reason I haven't covered Gridman is simply because I did not watch it while we were doing Finish or Fail. I watched the first 2 episodes a few months back because of the fact the show was getting, you know, talked about. It was a trigger show. People were curious about my thoughts on it and were telling me to watch it. I watched the first 2 episodes and I don't remember a single goddamn second of it. I don't remember anything. It left no impression on me. Nothing about it was interesting at all. I would have dropped it after the first episode. I don't think the characters are attractive. I don't think that the designs are interesting. I don't find the aesthetic interesting. I didn't find the plot interesting. Nothing grabbed me at all. I literally would have dropped it after episode 1, but because there was so much hype surrounding it, she wanted to watch another one because she was like, surely, you know, surely there must be something here. We watched episode 2 and I was like, I couldn't give less of a fuck at all. I truly don't remember anything that happened. Like, I'm trying as hard as I can to, like, no image is coming back into my brain. So that's why I haven't talked about it. I have nothing to say about Gridman. No interest at all. Anyway, here's our A.I.C.O discussion.
Really good A.I.C.O discussion.
We're still filming. I just wanted to dramatically pour my milk. Alrighty, we just watched all of I.C.O. And, sometimes you give a show like a 6 out of 10 because it's mediocre. And sometimes you give it a 6 out of 10 because it's a clusterfuck. And this is the latter type of show, which is the sadder type of show. It's the kind of show where you want to love it because there is so much good, so much legitimate good, and then there's just so much bad. How do you feel about I.C.O?
Got off to a really good start. I was really into the world it had kind of set up. I really liked all the technology.
The tech is probably the coolest thing about the show.
They had like this mirror that you can like touch to zoom in on, and they're in. A lot of the show takes place in a hospital, so it's like a lot of futuristic medical technology, but it's like really cool to kind of see that in action.
I love
the mechs were pretty cool, like those things. I don't know if you would call them mechs, but
well, do you just mean like their super suits?
They had like super,
they're
like
very
artificial
similar to the
life form suits.
Oh, those suits, because they're wearing 2 layers of suits. They've got like the artificial life form suit that wraps around them, which just kind of generally makes them stronger and like more badass. But then they're also wearing like an armor suit that's very similar to the Spartan suits from Halo.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because Bones worked on the Halo anime, so maybe maybe
they were just like, you should rip this off.
Before we even address any of that, we should probably talk about the fact that this is a Studio Bones show that is a Netflix original, like a proper, actual Netflix original, not just something they slapped that name onto.
They really should make a distinction between the two.
Yeah,
because
it's
like
annoying.
There's a difference between a show that like Netflix has exclusive rights to show, like they should just call that a Netflix exclusive, and then a Netflix original is something that has been made to air on Netflix exclusively.
Right.
That's usually they're structured better for binge watching.
Well, this one was much better at that than Be the Beginning. Be the Beginning was terribly structured for that because the guy didn't know. He just straight up, the director just didn't believe.
He didn't believe it. He was like, I don't believe it. That can't be right.
I.C.O feels as though it was made to be watched in one sitting. The episodes flow directly into each other. It's a small scale story that takes place in a small amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, the first couple of episodes is all about, like, setting up the story. It's like, this is what's going to happen on the mission, and the rest of it is just following through. There's, like, there's no...
Episodes 4 through 12 are this one mission that the characters are on, to do this thing.
There's no filler. There's no breakaway from what's going on.
Now, I will say, though, that my problem with this show structurally... Everything we talk about here is going to have to be, like, giveth and taketh away. Like, there's always, like, it did it right until this point, And it's, like, structurally, the problem with this show is that it's 12 episodes long. They're regular, 22-minute episodes. And even though the show is structured well for binge watching, it also wastes a lot of time, unnecessarily. And I think that... if they had taken the approach of like, hey, this is Netflix, it could be whatever. I mean, maybe Netflix asked them specifically for 12 episodes, but like, if they had cut down the episode count, then there wouldn't have been a necessity to repeat themselves so often.
To show the same footage over and over again, and like, some of that footage is memory, so it makes sense to kind of reuse footage, but the extent to which they do it is overkill.
And just, like, there's... the way that this show presents information is very circuitous. It's like, they'll tell you... it's like you have a sentence that the show is trying to say, but it only says the first 3 words of the sentence. And then a couple episodes later, it'll say those first 3 words and then 2 more words, and then it'll say... little more, and like that's how the whole show is structured, is like you never quite have the full picture, but they keep having to repeat the parts of the sentence they've already said as they add in more unnecessarily, because it is a show that you could describe the plot in like a paragraph, but like only if you'd seen the whole thing, and until that point it's just constantly giving you little bits and pieces. But it's, like, obnoxious, because it's so simple, and the only reason that it's not simple as it's being told is that they made it so convoluted. They told it as convolutedly as possible so that they could have twists at the end to finish off those sentences, but, like, it just comes off annoying.
Yeah.
And it made me think. So I started thinking about why would they do it this way, and my best theory is that they probably intend, once the rights lapse from Netflix, to run this on TV at some point, because that's usually what happens with these kinds of shows. Like Bones once did a show called Bonen no Zamdo, or Zammed, Lost Memories, XAM apostrophe D, Zammed.
Of course.
Which was a absolutely gorgeous original anime that they made back in like 2009 for the PlayStation 3, because Sony rolled out this thing where you could pay for a rental of an episode. You could pay like $3 for a standard def or $4 for an HD to like rent the episode for a week and watch it as many times as you wanted. I think they later made it so you could buy them outright because people were so pissed off that you had to pay that much for a rental
of
an episode. Even if it was absolutely beautiful, it was insanely high quality. But like the show also, like, the script was kind of weird, and like, so a lot of people just weren't that into the show even if they did watch it. But like, if you bought it, you were buying it for the quality of visuals. But like, obviously that's a pretty limited audience of people who owns a PS3 and is gonna buy a expensive rental on the marketplace. But like, by releasing it in such an expensive way, they could afford to make the show, and then like long-term profit for the studio was they later ran it again on TV. They recut it and made a TV run. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of future-proofing the show by making it so it could be televised in the long run as a 12-episode series, but it just feels like if they were going to do that, they should have written it better.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if this is a show that will survive.
They should have just written it better, period.
Yeah, I don't know if this show's going to survive the test of time well enough, because... so, I guess we'll get into... what is the biggest problem with this show? Whoever wrote this is a sci-fi writer. Only a sci-fi writer. They are not a drama writer. They are not a character writer. They are not a
romance writer.
No, definitely not a romance. They just like...
oh, Jesus.
The sci-fi concepts in this show are mega interesting. Like, again, you said the technology, like, and it's so detail-oriented, especially in the early part of the show, where it's like, everything has a clear purpose. The girl's in a wheelchair at the start, but it's like a futuristic wheelchair. It's well thought out what it can do. It's like, every piece of tech that somebody uses in the show, you just think, oh, wouldn't that be cool if that existed, I think it probably takes place in like 2021 or something like that. Because that was like the serial number on their eyeballs, unless they clarified and I missed it. But like, it takes place in like this sort of we'll call it a Silicon Valley, because it's just a valley in Japan where they're developing like insanely high tech shit.
And there's like a lot of competing medical scientists and stuff.
Yeah, well, I think they were working together before the plot of the show began.
Yeah,
I don't know if they were competing initially. It's one of those shows where there's a lot of like back history to what's going on, which is what convolutes it so much, because it's like we're introduced to like a post-cataclysmic world where not like a widespread cataclysm, but like this research that these people were doing led to some kind of like evil ooze emerging.
Yeah, the burst.
The burst, yes. And what is this stuff called? Matter. It's just this stuff called matter, and it's just like a red ooze that like attacks people and shit and is bad. I don't know why it does that particularly. I don't know why it's so aggressive. It's
kind of like out of control.
Whatever.
I guess.
The matter is like they've tried to seal it off, but it's slowly encroaching its way to the city, and like if they can't defeat the matter, it'll eventually take over the world, I guess.
So the government's trying to kind of intervene, and there's like a conflict of interest between the government and like the main cast of characters in the hospital and everything.
It's really bizarre because like it doesn't seem like the matter is that hard to fight. Like, so this show is really hard to talk about because of the fact that it's written in such a way that like is to hide how stupid it is. Like, the plot, the more you learn about it, the less sense it makes. And so I understand why they made it so convoluted. Because it's like, for instance, early on we were introduced to this idea of divers, who are people who are wearing these, like, Spartan suits, and they have all this cool ammo, and they fight. They basically go into the area that's infested with the matter to, like, collect data and samples that is needed by these scientists who are, like, contracting them to go in, sort of like a Made in Abyss divers in a way.
Yeah.
Except they're not being forced child slave labor.
Yeah, but a lot of the characters, like, that are divers have rough pasts and stuff.
Right. They have reasons to be doing such a dangerous.
They're they're throwing
sort of
their
job.
lives on the line. They're
Right.
all screwed in the head.
They're like a little bit of thrill seeker, a little bit of bounty hunter, and a little bit of, like, doing it to
Spoiled rich kid.
Yeah,
with
one of them is just a
arm.
spoiled rich kid. Okay, the thing is, the characters are fucking terrible. Like,
They are.
the character writing in this show is god awful. So, like, I don't even want to talk about why they are doing the shit. Like, when you watch the first episode and you don't know any of what's going on, and you see the divers fighting the ooze, it is cool. And that is the thrust of why this show is watchable, is that divers versus ooze equals cool. Because the ooze is animated really interestingly, and it's just like, it's like it's like a living ooze.
It moves like the sentient whatever thing in Princess Mononoke, where it's like splashing and evolving constantly.
Right, it looks
pretty cool.
And, like, the way they fight it is cool because their super suits have, like, wheels. They're like roller skate.
Oh yeah,
things.
they have heelys. They're
they
going fast.
click their heels together and the wheels come out. But, like, they've got, like arm monitors where, like, the gestures they make with their hand, like, changes what's on screen, and they check the sample data of previously fought, like, oozes, and that's how they check what type of ooze it is, and they, like, change their ammunition
and they have fucking laser guns.
Shoot their laser ammo at the ooze to stop it. That all seems pretty cool the first time you see it. The problem is once you start thinking about it, because they make it out like there's, like, this whole culture of these divers who have been doing this, who've been going in and, like, fighting the ooze to recover stuff. But the actual mission they go on, which is ultimately to stop all of the ooze, like, as they do it, they reach several checkpoints where they, like, kill off all the ooze that is past that checkpoint, and it makes you wonder, why isn't that every diver mission? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's, like, 4 checkpoints that the ooze has breached. But, like, and it's a big deal that the ooze has breached I'll call it the matter. The matter has breached these 4 checkpoints, and it's, like, making its way to the city. But as they do this mission to get to the heart of it all, they keep getting to a checkpoint, closing the gates on the ooze and, like, electrifying it and killing off a huge section of it. Why weren't they doing that already? Why is that just a part of this mission? Wouldn't that just completely dissolve the necessity of divers if they can just kill the ooze?
I don't think the divers were necessarily going in to kill the ooze. I think it was more of, like, they were going in to get samples or do, like, something specific for research purposes.
I'm just saying, like...
But, like, yeah,
if it's so important that the ooze not impede on the city, if that's what the danger zone scenario is, hey, ooze has breached all the gates and it's almost here, we gotta go stop the ooze. But it's like, at any point you could have at least stopped sections of the ooze. Like, you could just have the divers go in and shut down these checkpoints one by one.
I think the further you get, the closer and closer you get to, like, the epicenter, it's harder and harder to get in. And, like, once they've reached the last one, it's like no divers, like, had been able to reach that one.
You could have at least bought time.
Yeah,
Why can't the ooze climb over the mountains, by the way? Like, so all of this is through this valley, and there's, like, these 5 dams that are stopping the ooze, and the ooze keeps breaching them, but, like, surrounding the valley is just, mountains that it seems like it could just climb. Why is the ooze not spreading over the mountains? These are all questions that, early into the show, you have no reason to think there won't be answers to, so you don't think about it that much. But as the show goes on, and the story... the motivations of the characters become more and more clear, you keep going, oh, wait, if that's the case, then why not this?
Then why not do this?
So the worst one of these is that, so okay, let me just explain the actual plot of what's going on in this show. So, there was this group of scientists. There is one named Yuya Tachibana, and he created the artificial, at the beginning there was no ooze. It was just three scientists trying to create artificial life, basically. They're trying to create artificial organisms. One guy figures it out, Yuya Tachibana. He's like, I have figured out how to create artificial life. This other scientist, did he also create the 3D printer that makes it possible to do that?
He created something related to, like...
Well,
I'm not
anyway.
exactly sure what he did, but, like, he invented some shit.
Yeah, so there's Yuya Tachibana. He's like the main guy. He's like the head scientist, the head big boy who invented this technology.
Maybe he figured out how to, like, incorporate that into, like put that in a living body.
Yeah,
like, because I think he was
that.
able to make like the limbs and stuff.
Right. All of them are under. There's so like they all work for this one like hospital. These three doctors. So the leader of the hospital is this old guy, and then he has these three people working under him. You got Yuya Tachibana, you got A.I.C.O's dad, whose name I don't remember, and the bad guy, whose name I also don't remember. He's not the bad guy at the time.
And then there's also the guy who is A.I.C.O's doctor, who gets fired.
Oh yeah, him too.
And who performed the surgery on the Ura,
Yeah.
Dr. Ura.
So basically what happened is this guy created the technology for artificial life. So they start experimenting with creating like full-blown clones of existing humans. So the first full-blown clone they create is of some boy, just some kid who they found. And that kid, the original ends up dying. So only the cloned body remains. Yuya Tachibana, we'll leave that behind for now. There's just this clone of this boy who exists. Then you've got one of the doctors, who the one who's A.I.C.O is our main character. Her dad is the second doctor, and they get into a car accident that I think kills the dad.
Yeah.
Right? He dies in this car accident, and his daughter is still she's still alive but barely hanging on. So they create a perfect clone of her.
Well, they had already had samples and stuff, because if they used the doctors' families and made duplicates of the families.
So there was a duplicate of her that already existed, and also the guy who was going to become the bad guy also has duplicates of his daughter created, of which there are many for some reason. He's got 50 clones of his daughter.
Why wouldn't you have 50 clones of your daughter?
His motivations get really fucking strange, because they never explain what he was planning to do with them. That's the biggest question left at the end of this show is, what the hell was he planning to do with the 50 clones of his daughter? And even... Okay, I gotta get back to the story. So we've got the clone of this kid, we've got the clone of A.I.C.O, and the clone of the other scientist's daughter. A.I.C.O's dad dies in a car accident. A.I.C.O is... They're trying to put her back together. In order to do this, they have to perform a surgery where they put a bunch of synthetic bullshit into her body, so that she has nanomachines. If you've ever played Metal Gear Rising and you remember the nanomachine sun moment, it's the exact same. It works the same way as Metal Gear Solid nanomachines. So she's got nanomachines basically, except it's bio shit. It's not technically techno shit. It's bio shit.
Artificial.
Life. It is life. I guess it's technically techno shit, but it is living techno shit.
Yeah.
So they have to use nanomachines to put her body back together. However, they've also got this clone of her, and as I'm explaining this, I'm not even sure why they had to do this.
Why they had to switch brains?
Yeah, I don't actually know why, but so they swap the brain of the clone with the original girl. Maybe they just didn't think they could repair the body. I don't even fucking know. That is really confusing. But anyways, so they swapped the brains of the real her and the clone her. And when this happened,
it's really confusing because like they originally just explained it as like we had to swap to save you, but like
it's because of all the plot twists that it doesn't make any fucking sense. Because it made sense when they first explained it, and then there's a twist, and then it doesn't make sense anymore. So, yeah, like you were saying, the original idea was that they had... Because originally they said, like, oh, we had to swap your real brain into your clone body because your real body was going to die. But then we find out that the reality is she, our main character, is the clone brain in the real body, and the reason she thought it was the opposite is because she has the nanomachine, so she's basically in a fake body, you know, like, she's not really in a realistic version of her own body. But anyways, for the plot to happen, they swapped the bodies of these two. When this happened, the cloned body, like, without having its brain, had, like, an adverse reaction and just started going fucking crazy. And that is what is called the
matter?
No, what is the event called? The burst.
The burst.
The burst
yeah.
link. So she starts burst linking like crazy.
It was really weird, because, like, when they introduced the boy, because, like, in what, like, the second episode, he becomes a transfer student on the last day of school.
That was the first episode.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
And then all the kids are like, oh, he's the burster. And, like, what does that even mean?
They never did explain what a burster is, did they?
What the fuck?
Because a burster's not the same thing as a diver, right?
No.
What the fuck is a burster? Did they ever explain that? I don't even remember.
No, I don't think so. I think they just,
literally
like,
don't remember what a burster was.
I think they gave up on that.
Was
like,
it just... there must have been something and we're just forgetting.
Maybe it just means, like, your family died in the burst or some shit. And that's why you're, like...
I don't remember what a burster was.
Burst
I forgot that was a thing they called him. Because, yeah, it sounded like they said burst link the first time that he came on.
It's just, like, really weird that they would do
So
that.
anyways, they swapped these two things' brains... And when they did that, the cloned body went crazy, but it still has the real girl's brain inside of it. So, the clone body has gone apeshit, and it is the ooze, and the ooze is trying to break through all these barriers and just destroy everything, and her consciousness is fading away. And when her consciousness fades completely, there will be no more holding the ooze back, basically. So, in the explosion, you know, in the blast that was the ooze erupting out, because it all happened at once. It just like blew up the whole facility. Supposedly, the doctor who created all this, Yuya Tachibana, died. The reality is that he put his brain into the clone body of that young boy. So he is in a high school boy's body, and he transfers into the girls' class in the first episode. So... God,
why wouldn't he have to be in a wheelchair?
Why would he or wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he? Because she had to be in a
she had
wheelchair.
to... I don't know why she had to be in a wheelchair in the first place.
It's like her body regenerates, so why the fuck would she need to be in a wheelchair?
Like, basically, it's like they... When it is revealed that her body is that, like, nanomachine shit, like... is when she suddenly doesn't need the wheelchair anymore, and it's not... I think there was a reason. I think it was just that, like,
was it
had
dormant?
awoken...
Yeah.
I don't fucking know. It was stupid. So anyways, the doctor is secretly in the body of this young boy. His brain is secretly in that body. This is like a late game twist. The reason I'm explaining all of this to you is that everything the show tells you up until the end is to make you not understand this stuff. But then once you understand it, the show before it no longer adds up.
No.
Because, so he's in the brain of this kid, and basically he thinks that it's possible to stop the burst, to stop the encroachment of the bullshit from destroying the world, if they can swap the two brains back. If they put the girl's fake brain back in the fake body, then they can just... it'll just die, or they'll just, like, inject it with a thing and it'll die. And the real brain will be back in the real body, which is a nanomachine sun body, and they'll take it away and everything will be peachy. So, in order to accomplish this, he hires a team well, 2 teams of 2 divers. So he hires 4 divers. They might as well have just been a team. The whole them being 2 different teams amounted to nothing in the story.
Yeah, they like kind of play it as like, oh, there's gonna be a competition because we can only take so many divers to like the final zone.
But then they take all 4 of them anyway.
Like, oh, it was just a test.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that was just to, you know, cause conflict between the characters.
Yeah, it was just to have a reason for the characters to have anything to talk about at all, I guess. Yeah, like you said, conflict just to generate. Again, this guy's a terrible dramatic writer.
Yeah.
Like, the sci-fi is interesting, I promise. The nanomachine stuff is all, like, when the best moment in the climax of the show is when the Professor Yuya explains how he created the clone brain. Because they had been trying to do this, but none of the nano shit that they had created ever was sentient. Like, they couldn't create something that had, like, you know, like a soul, basically. They were able to create stuff that was able to live and exist, but not to, like, have a personality or, you know, humanity. The way he was able to do it was by, like, just, like, mapping every conceivable possibility of how this girl could have, like, developed her brain, I guess.
By using, like, dreams, like, by studying her dream and, like, the brainwaves from her dream, he was able to map out, like, every single possibility, and because there was 2 of them, there was, like, 2 versions of her, 2 different brains, they were able to, like, times that by 2, so they'd have, like, a bunch of possibilities, and then with that they were able to...
Basically, it was like...
But how would they be able to do that with 2 if they only had 1 brain that was able to dream?
No, the impression I had was that they had just, like, mapped out every possibility of what her brain shape could be, and anything that wasn't congruent with her brain, they threw out that possibility. Okay. So, like, he just waited, because he says, like, oh, I waited, was, like, the main part. It was, like, I just waited for all of those possibilities to run through until it had found the shape of her brain, basically. Like,
yeah, you're right.
Until the other brain understood how to be the same as this brain, and then that was the finished brain.
And then backwards engineering, he was able to make the brain.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was just thinking about the diagram they showed of, like, 2 different brains and then all
like
different...
going
and it was
into
like,
each other.
Wait, how do they have 2 brains? And I guess that was just how they translated it. But
does this necessarily make any sense? I don't know, but it was interesting. It was like, oh, okay, there's someone tried to explain how you could create a sentient consciousness.
Because, like, the one guy's like, well, wouldn't you need, like, lifetimes to have this much evolution? And he's like, no, we just use, like...
Just use probabilities, basically. But yeah, so that was interesting, and like the way all the technology, the way it works is so satisfying. Like when you see the characters like in their super suits and in their like they have these, what would I describe them as? They're like just small wheeled vehicles, like these little buggies on like 4 spider leg wheels, you know? That are really fun to watch. Like, all the guns are cool, all the reloading is cool, the different types of ammo is cool, everything looks good. The show is gorgeously animated all the way through, almost. There's, you know, it's as consistent as any good anime is.
Yeah.
Like, I would have no complaints about the animation. It had so many incredible sequences, and it was never like unnecessarily flashy. Like what I hate about modern like Sakuga shit is that it's always like you're watching a normal looking show and then there's like 15 seconds of like ridiculous overdrawn shit that like is just to look impressive, but like it doesn't have any meaning. This show is like, it's not flashy, it's just impressive when you think about like that it looks natural. It just looks like 4 guys in suits naturally zipping around and fighting a giant ooze monster, but when you actually think about the level of detail in those suits and the level of detail in the monster and how hard it would be to track the like the foreshortening on their movement, you're just like, wow, everything looks incredible in this show.
Yeah, it looks cool as fuck.
I would say that the color design is not that inspired, but given the genre, it didn't bother me, you know? Like, I mean, if you're into sci-fi, if you're not like me and you're into stuff that's like, you know, pixie dream magic bullshit, then like you'll probably think that this is like the best looking show possible. I have to cut the clip. So it looks amazing and it's satisfying to watch, which is why we watched this whole thing. And again, at first you can't tell how little sense it makes. So this mission, we've got the scientist, his brain is in the body of a teenage boy. He acts like an emo teenager the whole show. Like, you have this dramatic reveal that it's actually the scientist guy. And, like, not to say that he doesn't have reason to be emo. And, like, his mission is an emo mission. It's that the way he talks is, like, an emo, edgy teen. And, like, there's a scene where he's sort of, like, pulled into his own headspace in, like, this weird, trippy sequence where, like, he gets captured by this second ooze girl. We'll talk about that in a bit. And he's in, like, a dream area where he is his, like, original self. And he sounds like an older guy, like a middle-aged scientist guy. So, like, when he's in teenager mode, like, yeah, his vocal cords would be different, but the way that voice actor delivers the lines is as though he was an edgy teen. And it's fucking ridiculous when you, like, know the truth.
Yeah,
and you're like,
it's really,
what?
It's really stupid.
He's just been acting like an edgy 15-year-old this whole time? How? How did he pull that off, you know?
Maybe he was doing it on purpose because he...
Yeah, but he doesn't, like, let up on it after it's revealed.
No.
He doesn't stop. There's no, like, oh, I was this guy all along, now I'm gonna act differently. Oh, God. His character sucks.
He had a dark past and felt a lot of guilt.
Yeah, so the real reason he's doing all this is that he feels that he created this problem. He wants to swap the two girls' brains back, and then when the thing dies, he's going to kill himself. That's his plan, as is revealed later on. So to get there, he needs these 4 divers. He's also got 2 teammates who know most of the truth of the situation. Like, they know the truth about the fact that the girl is not the real brain. Like, they know that it's the fake brain in the body. The divers don't know
The divers don't know because she's an artificial life form, the other artificial life forms and matters are attracted to her.
Right. So they didn't want to tell the divers.
Because they might not, you know,
they might not
take on the mission.
It was really dumb, though. Like, everything that is kept secret from the characters in this show, you always find yourself thinking, yeah, but wouldn't it have made more sense to tell them? Like, these guys are just mercenaries. Like, if they had told them all the parameters of the job, I don't think they would have not taken it.
Yeah, they were already willing to throw their lives away in the first place.
It's a life-threatening job.
As, like, nobody else would be able to
And then he
do
says
this.
that to them later on. He's like, well, you guys already knew this is life-threatening, so why does it matter? And it's like, yeah, exactly. So why didn't you tell them in the first place? But, like, if they had known, then the one guy wouldn't have fallen in love with A.I.C.O, and then you wouldn't have that plot point. So it's just like everything... When you break it down, every single time the answer to the question is because the show couldn't exist without it. You know? Because, oh, we couldn't have done this thing we wanted to do. And I understand why they wanted that, because they're like, they want to bring up the question of, like, how, you know, how human does a synthetic life form have to be before it is human, you know? And so, like, the fact that she's got emotions and memories of her own, even she believes herself to be human, so she's like, fuck you, I'm human. But then the fact that someone has fallen in love with her adds to that, but, like, it's so stupid. This guy falls in love with her for no reason. They have no chemistry. She's, like, 16, and he's at least 18, I assume. He seems like kind of a teenager, but, like, he's been doing this job for a while, and he's good at it. Like, he's one of the 4 picks for, like, best guys to do job with. But, like, it's very clear that, like, they wanted to have this happen, and so how can we make that happen in the story? Like, how can we make that make sense? It's, like... Early on in the show, I felt like it was very robust in that it was addressing things like how does the government feel about this situation, like what are all the ramifications of like all the stuff that's going on. But then when you learn the truth after all the reveals, it goes back and just like keeps ruining everything behind it. So this is what I've been trying to build towards, is what I consider to be the biggest plot hole in the show, which is that, so he's doing this mission with these 4 people. He's got the backing of the scientist who actually performed the surgery on her to switch the brains, who's one of the original scientists in the thing, that guy is sort of like leading this team, this mission to go in and bring the girl back and replace swap the brains back. But they also have this girl who works for the government who's like knows what's going on. And okay, here's how the information is presented to us early in the show. We are told that the data that they have in this place is really important and they want to get it. We are told that like they're going in there because Dr. Yuya's data, like all of his research on this stuff is in there, in this facility, and they can't get to it. And so they don't want to just like nuke the area. Like they don't want to just strike and burn and destroy everything because they will destroy the data in the process. And when she has this meeting with the government of all the council of people from Japan, they're all like, we should just destroy this thing before it gets out of hand. Like, there's 10 days or whatever before it's going to destroy the world. We need to destroy it in those 10 days. And she's like, hey, I've got this mission where I'm going to send these guys in there, and they're going to get this data, and they're going to stop the burst. Like, as long as I get my guys in there, they can stop it. We have a plan, right? And the government, and then she says, like, besides, what if your plan doesn't work? What if strike and burn and destroying everything, like, what if that's not actually possible? Like, do you guys want that on your hands? Like, who wants to be responsible for the tragedy if it doesn't work out? And they're all like, oh, shit, I guess we'll let her do her thing, right? Well, then, arbitrarily at some point, the government changes their mind. And they're like, fuck it.
We're going in.
Call your guys out. We're gonna blow the fucking thing up. I don't know if it didn't seem like she had taken too long. It seemed like everything was going according to schedule. I don't know if it's just because of the hospital takeover or because the guy, so there's an opposition force at work here of the guy who I keep describing as the bad guy, another doctor for the original facility, and his daughter is in a coma after a skiing accident. And her brain is connected to all these clones of her in this facility. And also, she is controlling her own ooze. I don't know the source of it exactly. She also has an ooze.
Yeah, why does she have ooze?
There's 2 oozes. One of them's hers.
Is there anything about her that
Never
is
explained.
artificial, or is she just, like, connected to the
I don't think they switched her brains or anything. She's just a girl in a coma, and she's got a bunch of clones, and for some reason, her comatose brain, which is connected to those clones, is also connected to some ooze, so it's controlling ooze because it wants to get back to its body. It's like her consciousness is in the ooze, and is trying to get back to her body, which is back at home. And it is never explained why that is the case, or what this guy's goal was in having her consciousness there, but he doesn't, like, his goal is to wake up his daughter. That's what he keeps saying. He's like, I have to wake her up. And the other scientist at the end of the show is like, hey, all you have to do is disconnect her brain from the ooze. And he's like, shut up! What the fuck? None of it makes any fucking sense. So this guy is the opposition force. So like he gets the doctor who's like leading the other team fired from the hospital, and like the guy who was like the leader of the hospital, the old man, dies because he was on life support.
So he becomes the new leader, and I think that's probably why the government decided to change its plans.
Yeah, I think he said something to someone, and they got the government to go in. But like the thing is that it's later, as the government is going in, that head doctor guy, like, watching it on TV is like, if they attack, it's just going to make things worse. That is not what was pitched to us earlier in the show. What was pitched at the meeting was, we want to go in there to save this data, and we're gonna stop the shit, and then, like, you know, if our plan doesn't work, you guys can nuke the fucking shit. But now we're being told explicitly that nuking the shit would never have worked in the first place, ergo this is the only plan that could have stopped the thing. So why didn't they just tell the government this is the only way? Now, the thing is that they didn't even tell the woman in the government that the scientist is still alive in this boy's body. They think that the scientist is dead and that they're going in there to get his data and then stop the burst. The reality is that he's going in to stop the burst and then kill himself, but, like, his data, he has the data. It's in his fucking brain. He's alive.
Yeah.
So all they actually are doing is just going to stop the burst. So why did they not just tell them that that's what they're doing? And the guy's, you know, when she finds out that he's alive, she's like, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, well, you wouldn't have let him go on such a dangerous mission if you had known that he was alive. Why did he need to go on this mission? Why did you greenlight that? Why did anybody greenlight this mission? Now, I guess what they're trying to suggest is that he's the only one who could do the brain surgery, so he had to...
But no, that's not true, because
I just don't...
Because the other doctor, the one who was watching the screen, had done the surgery successfully on him.
But he doesn't have a nanomachine body, so it wouldn't be as easy for him to go in.
No, it's true, but, like...
But, like, if this is the only way to stop...
surgery in the first place.
If this is the only way to stop the burst, let him go in. Because this is the only, like, nuking the area, we are explicitly told, will not work. This is the only plan. So send him in there and let him do the only plan. But because they try to be so secretive about it and all this is why they only bring in a small team. Because they're like... They're trying to cover up information. They're trying to keep it on the down low. They bring in this small team. So it's just another case of it's the only way you could justify the plot.
Yeah.
It's the only way you could justify the story that they want to tell is to have this bullshit, circuitous, double reach around fucking story that makes no goddamn sense once the reveals happen. And again, if you watch the first, like, 7 episodes of this show, it's perfectly, like, it never... doesn't make sense. It just leaves you with a lot of unanswered questions. You're always like, okay, what is this building to? Okay, where are they going with this? And then they finally tell you where they're going with this, and now you're like, oh, well then nothing made sense in the first place. So it's like, if the show had played any of these cards early enough on, you would have been like, oh, this show's stupid, I'm not gonna watch anymore. But it's like they tricked you. It's like a sleight of hand, you know? So the plot is really stupid. And the character writing is terrible. The characters are not interesting or likable or believable at all. Like, their motivations aren't good. Their interactions are annoying. There's scenes where they make just stupid decisions. There's one episode where, like, I think it's like episode 4, where, like, the writing first starts to go downhill. And, like, A.I.C.O just, or maybe it's 5. They're, like, at the first, like, checkpoint. You know, into the ooze land, and, like, they're taking a break, and A.I.C.O has this, like, they discover that, this ball she's been carrying around is actually a synthetic hamster, that her dad had left her, which is going to be a plot convenience later, but, the hamster accidentally runs out of the facility, so she just suits up and goes out by herself to go look for the hamster, out in the dangerous-ass wild, doesn't tell anybody.
It's super dangerous, and, like, people aren't willing to even go out there without a suit on and shit.
And so immediately I'm just like, oh god, I hate this girl now. Like,
she's just really brave.
Any goodwill I had towards her as a character was gone after that. Yeah. I was just like, oh, what a fucking dumb brat. And there's a lot of scenes like that where, like...
She could have just asked for somebody's help.
Yeah.
And they would have done it.
And these 4 people who they take on the mission with them are all, like, too just hot-headed and brash to be, like, the 4 best people for the job.
Yeah.
And they're also young as shit. There's at least 2 characters who we learn nothing about.
Fucking purple girl. She's just, like... She's just the foil to the orange girl.
Yeah,
she's there to keep her in line.
The 4 divers, you've got the one kid who we learn through, like, explicit dialogue of 2 characters, like, arguing and just describing one another's personalities to each other. We are told this kid is a spoiled rich kid who just decided he wanted to, like, make his own decisions and do something dangerous, and he lost an arm, so he has a synthetic arm, which he will lose 2 more times throughout the show.
Very conveniently.
And this kid... He falls in love with A.I.C.O. And, like, that's all that happens with him. Then you've got his partner who's like an ex-Marine, and he's just like the ex-Marine guy or whatever. He's just like, he's like responsible.
He's very serious.
I would say that you get a good sense of who he is. Then you've got the two girls on a different team. You got orange-haired girl who's like the brash, showy. She has like a fucked up background, so she just throws herself into danger. And then you have her partner. I can't say a single word about. She's there for the whole show. You never learn anything about her backstory, anything about her motivations. She's just there. She's just a straight-faced character who's just there. And then you've got the two, like, chaperones, one of whom is, like, another, like, military kind of old, like, he's basically the same as the other guy. Like, another, like, ex-Marine type, level-headed dude. He basically exists to die. And then there's the other girl who's like the motherly one. We never learn anything about her other than that it seems like she was in love with the military guy. And you only really even get a sense of that after he dies. And she like freaks out. And you're like, oh, I guess she must have liked him. So like, yeah, most of the characters get no semblance of development, assuming they even make sense. And they don't... Like, it's really weird that they put so much thought into the technology and making the world feel, like, alive and interesting, and right off the bat, you're like, wow, this is a cool location. I wonder what's up with these characters, and then the second you learn, you're like, I wish I didn't know.
No.
I wish you never told me about them. I wish you just stuck to sci-fi. I wish emotions had never entered the picture.
Every time they opened their mouth.
Well, it gets really bad in the last, like, 4 or 5 episodes.
Because it all starts to fall apart.
Oh, no. Okay. To really get to the heart of how it falls apart in the end, we really just need to talk about the action. Because the action... All of the action scenes in this show, past the first couple episodes, when it's just, like... Like, there's a great action scene in episode 2, where, they've captured the main girl, and, they're, like, explaining the whole story to her, and they've made her realize that she's a synthetic being who can't be hurt. And she immediately is like, oh, I'm gonna jump out this 5th floor window and run away. And so there's, like, this chase scene of, like, everyone in this weird, like, town... Like, how do I describe it? They call it the town, but it's just, like, a bunch of...
It's like a complex, like a military...
What are those things called that it's made out of? Like shipping crates?
Weird crates, yeah. Like, different colored crates.
It's like a whole, like, makeshift town made out of shipping crates. And there's all these people who are, like, all the divers, all the people who are involved in like, you know, doing the missions into the ooze are in this place. So, like... She's running through town, and it's a really great scene because of not just, like, how well choreographed it is and organized, but that, like, different characters have different perspectives on what's going on. Because it's like, she's being chased by these people who are like, wait, we're just trying to help. But then she stumbles into the divers, and they're like, oh, you're running away? Let us help you. You know, like, not realizing that she is running from their team, you know? And, like, that kind of dynamic works really well. Mm-hmm. But once they're in the place, the problem that immediately arises is that they're fighting ooze. And it can just do anything that's convenient for the moment.
Yep.
So, like, most of the time, you just see the characters, like, shooting at the ooze, and it's just kind of like, if you shoot it a few times with the right bullet, it will, like, harden.
Is it gonna be resistant, or is it gonna...
Right. It's totally unpredictable. Like, you watch the characters, you'll just see them, like, skating around, shooting at ooze, and then, like, they will describe what is going on, and that's when you really have a sense of the stakes, because they'll be shooting at ooze, and then you're like, did that work or not? And sometimes... Because sometimes they'll shoot it, and then they'll just keep skating, and, like, you don't see it, like, harden and die every time, because it takes a few seconds. So, like, sometimes you see them shoot an ooze, and then you see it turn black and crumble, and you're like, okay, victory.
Sometimes you see an ooze, and they just skate right past it after they shoot it.
Yeah,
and then... it's never explained.
And then sometimes it's like, oh, the stuff we're using isn't working, it must be a new type of ooze. And then, like, other times it's like... It's just like you don't really know until they say something.
Yeah.
And, like, you can be watching characters, like, skating around in circles, shooting at ooze for, like, minutes on end, and it all looks great. But there's just no stakes, because it's like, how at risk are they? And the ooze, like, you know, if it's 10 feet away from them, the ooze moves at 1 second like 1 inch per second, and if the ooze is 100 meters away, it shoots at them in like one quick burst. So it's just like, okay, it's just whatever it needs to be.
Just whatever's scariest.
Whatever it feels right, you know, whatever sense of tension you want the scene to have, that's how strong the ooze is, you know? Like when the one guy dies, it's just like he's shooting at stuff, and then you just see a tendril come through the screen and impale him, and you're like, well, like, I guess he was unlucky. I guess the ooze was right on top of him that time, as opposed to every other time.
It's so weird, because, like, the ooze is normally, like, grabbing people or, like, grabbing a limb, but the ooze, like, impaled him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we never seen the ooze, like,
normally it seems to be
like
assimilating
people.
Like, it seems like it's trying to take them in, but because this guy had to have a dramatic death scene, it just kills him. So, like, what are the motivations of the ooze? That is what I'd like to know.
It's out of control.
What is it? It's just out of control. It just is out of control. So,
don't think about it.
So every action scene, you're just kind of like, okay, alright, it looks good. It's satisfying to watch them shoot the guns. Sometimes there's character moments in the middle of the action, so you have something to grab onto. There's one moment that is fucking hilarious, where, like, halfway through the show, I think it's like at the end of episode 6 or so, so they've just cleared out their second, like, ooze zone, and they're getting ready to move on to the next ooze zone, but there's, like, this tunnel that they have to pass through that it's, like, completely filled with ooze. And they're like, shit, how are we going to get through this tunnel? And then, the military team or whatever, who, like, had tried to kidnap the girl in the first episode, like, these military team shows up in these, like, in the mech driving things that I was describing earlier, the little, like, carts on wheels. And they all show up and they're like, hey, fuck you guys, we're going to take you into custody. And then they just get fucking annihilated. Yeah. The entire crew. And it's like, we've been watching our team fight off the ooze with no problem for episodes on end. These guys show up and just get wiped. But the ooze doesn't just wipe our team, who's right across the bridge. It just wipes this other team totally ineffectually, all dead instantly at the start of the next episode. It's like, they show up at the end of the episode and they're like, oh, we got you cornered. The next episode starts and the one girl asks, like, A.I.C.O, oh, why do you trust that guy? Why are you doing the mission? And then they all get annihilated. It literally did nothing. No consequences at all. No point. Just to have some people die to the ooze, I guess, you know.
One really funny thing that happened during that scene is you were specifically talking about how the motivations of the characters were really unclear, and that was kind of like, it was ruining the show for you. And then the lady's like, why do you trust these people? Their motivations are unclear.
Yeah, she literally says it, and I was like, there you go.
Yep.
So, well, it was annoying that the motivations were unclear, because it's like, you never really, like, the show, okay, normally, the way that you empathize with characters is that you understand what they're trying to do, mm-hmm. and you want them to accomplish it because you root for them, because they appeal to you in some way.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh man, I hope he does become boxing champion, you know, if we're talking Megalobox. Like, so, in this show, like, you have, for the girl, she's got to switch her brains back so they can stop the ooze. Cool, right? Like, if the mission was simply to stop the ooze, great. And ultimately, that kind of is the mission, but they won't tell you that. The whole show, they're like, but what do they really want? Well, what they really want is to stop the ooze.
Of course.
And, like, everyone's double-crossing each other in the effort to do the same thing, except for, I guess, the bad doctor guy, whose mission is to wake up his daughter, but all he has to do that is to stop her mental link to the ooze. And I don't know why he wants her mentally linked to the ooze. Is it that he's trying to have this weapon at his disposal? Is it, because, like, if the truth was that he just wants both, like, he wants to be able to have the weapon and the girl, he never says that. He just says he's trying to wake up his daughter. The whole show, you just see him being obsessed with waking her up. Does he just not believe that it will work if he disables the link?
I don't know. I think he, like,
And if not,
has
why?
some kind of complex that he's not a good enough doctor, and that's why he has to get the other guy fired so he can... I don't know. It
So
just seems
bad.
like he is crazy.
So addressing that concern with the action scenes then takes us to the problem with the last 4 episodes, which is that becomes how the entire show operates, is that it's never clear what the stakes are, because as we when we get to like the core area where like all the ooze is, the ooze is like semi under control of the real brain of Aiko and also the consciousness of this other girl, and suddenly everyone's emotions matter a lot. Suddenly, like, just how people feel about the situation at present is governing their actions and what is going to resolve, and none of the emotions make any sense. It's just characters blathering on about how they feel.
I'm in love with Aiko.
Yeah, like...
I've got to undermine her mission because I'm in love with her.
Right, never mind that this mission is to save the world.
Yeah.
But, like, because they want the story to be about, like, ooh, can synthetic life really be considered real life? And in the end, it doesn't even fucking matter. He just switches their brains and it just works out. Like, he switches the brains, Aiko's back in her real body, and then the fake one inside, like, just, like, apparently the hamster had her bio data stalled inside of it. I don't even know what that means. Why was that necessary?
I think it was able to convert it back to the original. I don't know.
I don't even, like...
It was there,
So at the end, they put the synthetic brain back into the synthetic body, which is the ooze.
Jesus.
The ooze all shuts down and dies for no particular reason, because they didn't... Okay, they had this stuff that they're supposed to stab the ooze with to kill it, but, like, they use it on the other ooze, the ooze that is the one doctor's daughter that has, like,
that's
the 50
attacking.
bodies.
That he, like, had put a device on and then linked himself up to those...
Yeah, somehow he got control.
He was able to control the ooze.
He was able to
and why
put his brain in control.
Why didn't they do that from the beginning to stop the ooze?
It's so fucking stupid. And then... So they stopped the ooze with that vial, but they don't stop the Aiko's ooze. So then when the synthetic brain's put back in the synthetic body, all the ooze dies out, and then, like, she is just, like, birthed, like, this thing comes out of it, and she's, like, birthed from a chrysalis, and they're like, oh, I guess the hamster had saved her biodata? Why did they need that? She's in the... I guess they saved the data of the real body, and then, like, and that's where she had developed her personality, was within that body. I don't know if being a brain in a body is just, like, inexorably tied.
I don't
like,
know. She still, like, had her head when she was the matter right after the surgery.
Yeah.
But then she just, like, decided to, like, go back into the ooze and then be reborn with the data. I don't know how that data worked. I don't know how the hamster was able to just, like, be fine after that.
Oh, God, it hurts. It really hurts to describe.
The most baffling thing is, how was he able to control the ooze from the hospital, like the evil doctor guy? Like, how?
He just, like, puts on a helmet and he's like, now I can control the ooze.
To?
Couldn't he have done it all along?
Yeah.
What was his mission? What was his purpose?
And why
is he trying to stop them?
500 clones of his daughter in the
What I didn't understand was, if they had swapped the brains and it killed the Aiko's ooze, that wouldn't affect the other girl's ooze. So, like, all he had to do was lay low. All he had to do was not even say anything. Like, I thought for sure they were going to go through with the mission and then realize, oh shit, we fucked up. That wasn't enough to stop the burst because this other ooze is still out of control, you know? But, like, it wasn't like that. It was instead an incomprehensible fucking mess. And, like, the last few episodes, they keep trying to do all this, like, trippy stuff and emotional stuff, and it falls completely flat. The characters are so obnoxious.
Suck.
And then the ending, so, like, there's 2 Aikos at the end.
Yeah.
You know, the clone and the real one are both alive.
There's one for the doctor,
yeah.
and one for the soldier guy.
It's like implied that the doctor in the teenage boy's body is, like, also in love with Aiko, even though he's, like, a middle-aged man. Every guy in this seems like a pedophile.
Yeah.
And the girls are, like, the other girl, the daughter, because the daughter of the evil doctor is in love with that scientist. Like, she was before he was killed. We have to stop the clip again. This has gone over an hour now.
And we're only discussing the plot.
Yeah, I mean...
Oh, no.
It's... I think we've covered most of everything by this point.
We've been, like, covering it while we were discussing the plot.
The ending, like, there's two I.C.Os, and, like, it's... The one is, like, oh, we'll all live as a family together. I forgot to mention that, like, her mom and brother, like, I.C.O's mom and brother are, like, in a chrysalis at the place. And so, like, her main motivation for going on this mission is that if they stop the burst, her mom and brother will come back. So they free the mom and brother, and she's like, I'm gonna live with them, you know, and, like, we should all live as a family. But then the clone one is like, I guess she's just like, oh, I'll just live my own life. I don't want to intrude on yours. And so they show her just, like, transferring into school at the end. No clarification of who she's with, who's her family now, how is she subsisting, like, just, there should have been way more resolution. They should have cut down significantly on the amount of bullshit climax and put way more resolution in there. Well, we see what the four divers do, I guess. Like, one of them, the one girl starts, like, a karate class or something.
Oh, I
one
would
guy
not
becomes
even remember that.
one guy, the one dude becomes a rescue worker, I guess.
Cool.
Again, the resolution, like, breezes by. It was just like, we know you don't give a shit about these characters, so here's just, like, one shot of each of them. So, yeah, it was a total clusterfuck. And it's funny because, like, at the start of the show, like, the first few episodes, I was like, 8 out of 10. Like, this is rock solid. Cause
this looks and feels cool.
It was just fun and interesting. It was like, the tech was cool, the action was cool, it looks great. The characters haven't said anything about themselves yet, so you don't have any reason to think they're stupid. The plot seems intricate, but, like, all of the important details are not there. So you have no way of knowing how little sense it actually makes. And then, like, when you're around halfway through the show and they start revealing the characters, it's like, okay, the characters are obnoxious, but at least the action is still cool. At least the plot is still kind of intriguing. But then you start getting more and more frustrated that you don't know anybody's motivations and that it's not revealing anything, that it just keeps bringing up the mysteries again and again, but not resolving anything about them. And then pretty much from episode, like, 8 onwards, as soon as they start revealing things, it is just a downward spiral straight to hell.
Yeah.
And, like, it still looks good. The action's still good. There are still satisfying moments, but, like, the more emotional or the more plot-driven it gets, the more just insufferable it becomes. And right around the part where the evil doctor puts on the fucking thing and brain-gasm takes over the fucking ooze and becomes, like, a giant weird ooze monster, I was like, alright, I'm checked out. I don't care anymore.
This is insane.
Is there anything else you want to add about I.C.O?
The character designs were good.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. The character designs are by Naruko Hanaharu, who is one of my favorite porn artists. He did a lot of, he did, like, the poster artwork for Kamichu, and he also did the character designs for Suisei no Gargantia, which is the same director as I.C.O. So, same director and character designer as Gargantia, which was a production IG show written by Gen Urabuchi that was contentious. I never finished it myself. But, a lot of people didn't like it that much. Probably for similar reasons to this show, honestly. God, it's just, like, it's such a gorgeous show, and, like, I really would... Like, I honestly think if you're somebody who doesn't really get, like, frustrated so easily by a plot being dumb or, like, by character motivations, like, if you just want to watch
really
some cool sci-fi...
convoluted things with, like, a lot of plot twists.
Yeah.
We have spoiled a lot of those.
I mean, honestly, I think you'd be better off watching this show knowing how dumb it is. Like, if you watch it and you already know the twists and you already know that it's stupid, then, like, you can at least look past that and just watch the cool action scenes and, like, the cool tech and be engrossed that way. And I do think there are probably some people who won't be that bothered by it, who would enjoy it all the way through just because cool stuff happens. But, like, going by the fact that it has less than a 7 on Mal, I think most people who watched it were bothered. Like, I think most people watched it and went, oh, this got really dumb. But, like, I do think that there's enough good about it. Really, up until the very end, I still wanted to give it a 7. Like, I was like, if the ending itself isn't too bad, then I'll like
an ending.
When you're in episode 10 and it's really getting like weird and esoteric, like it's getting into the characters' minds, and like the animation quality is not that great, and there's tons of flashbacks in that episode, and it's like I had this feeling like, okay, this is the budget saver episode. They're gonna like spend the next two episodes.
Just cut that fucking episode.
Yeah, the episode 10 had no reason to exist on Netflix, where you're binge watching anyways. But like, you don't need to fill time for a TV slot.
No.
But like, the last, I figured, okay, they're gonna gear up. They're gonna make the last two episodes something special. The last two episodes are just non-stop plot twists and bad action scenes and bad emotional scenes, and that was what dragged it down to a 6 for me. And even like, you have to think about just how impressive the visuals must be for me to give a 6 to something that's this much of a fucking train wreck plot-wise, you know. But like, I can't take away the enjoyment I had of those early episodes.
Yeah, it's funny because like as we're talking about it, the more frustrating it is. It's because like, oh, wow, there's this much wrong with it. There's this much that doesn't make sense. But I mean, it's still worth like watching, in my opinion.
It's possible a few of those details we flubbed somewhere along the way, because the show deliberately is convoluted to make it so you won't think about it like that.
I'd also give this like a low 6.
Yeah. It was disappointing, but I mean, the fact that it was way better than I expected in the first place, and like the whole show, I was just like, well, this could be like Be the Beginning. Like, I didn't expect it to stay good.
Yeah.
Because it had a low score, and like Be the Beginning, the first 4 episodes were great, and the rest of it was fucking trash. This was better than that.
Yeah,
it held up better than that did.
Didn't stop looking good.
Yeah. I wish. I really want to like this whole Netflix move, because like I like marathoning shows. I like that high quality studios are doing original work for Netflix. I just wish that there was more
maybe
script
you'll really
control.
Like Baki.
We'll see. All right, that's it for this one. I gotta poop. Later.